3 days before Thanksgiving, my own son called to tell me he wouldn't be coming over for dinner. The same son whose $78,000 a year Stanford tuition I've been paying without missing a single payment for the past 2.5 years. The same son who grew up in the house I built with my bare hands, working 70-hour weeks as a contractor to give him everything I never had. And now he was telling me, his own father, that he'd rather spend Thanksgiving with his stepfamily because they have a bigger house in a better neighborhood. I sat there in complete silence, my phone still pressed against my ear as he continued making excuses. The turkey I'd special ordered from the local farm was already thawing in my refrigerator. The handwritten place cards I'd spent an hour making were sitting on my dining table. And my son, my only child, had just decided I wasn't worth his time anymore. What I did next shocked everyone, including myself. But before I tell you how I responded to my son's betrayal, let me take you back to the beginning, so you can understand exactly why I did what I did. You see, I'm not just any father. I'm a 58-year-old divorced dad who spent the last 20 years building a successful contracting business from nothing. Every callus on my hands, every gray hair on my head, they all tell the story of how hard I've worked to provide for my son after his mother left us when he was only 7 years old. "Dad, it's just dinner," my son Tyler said through the phone that day, his voice carrying that dismissive tone he'd picked up since starting college. "It's not like I'm abandoning you or something. The Prestons just have this whole big family gathering with like 30 people, and Melissa really wants me to meet everyone. The Prestons, my ex-wife's new family. The real estate developer with the mansion in Woodside who swept her off her feet 5 years after our divorce. The man who became my son's stepfather but never had to say no to him, never had to discipline him, never had to work overtime to pay for his baseball equipment or his braces or his first car. Tyler, we always have Thanksgiving together," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "It's our tradition. I've already bought everything." He sighed that exasperated sigh that teenagers perfect and apparently never outgrow. "Dad, the Prestons have a chef coming in, an actual chef from a Michelin-starred restaurant, and they've got this whole weekend planned with everyone staying over. Their place has a pool house bigger than your entire house." Each word felt like a physical blow. I looked around my modest 3-bedroom ranch-style home, the home where I'd raised him, the home where I'd taught him to ride a bike in the driveway, the home where I'd stayed up countless nights helping him with homework or comforting him after nightmares. "I see," was all I could manage to say. "Look, I'll come by for Christmas, okay? The Prestons are going to Aspen for Christmas anyway." Second choice. I was his second choice. "Dad, are you still there?" Tyler asked after my extended silence. "Yeah, I'm here," I replied, my mind already racing ahead to what I needed to do next. "Have a good Thanksgiving with the Prestons." I hung up before he could respond. That night I didn't sleep. I sat at my kitchen table staring at those handmade place cards and thinking about everything I'd sacrificed for Tyler. The dates I'd turned down because I needed to attend his school events. The promotions I'd passed up because they would have required travel that would have left him alone too much. The retirement fund I'd drained to cover his first year at Stanford before his scholarships kicked in. But what really kept me awake was a conversation I'd had with my own father shortly before he passed away, just 1 year before Tyler started college. "Son," my father had said lying in his hospital bed, "you've given that boy everything. But sometimes giving everything isn't the right move. Sometimes a man needs to learn the value of what he has by feeling what it's like to lose it." I hadn't understood what he meant at the time, but sitting at that kitchen table at 3 a.m., those words suddenly made perfect sense. The next morning, I made 3 phone calls that would change everything. The first call was to Stanford's financial aid office. "Hello, this is Richard Miller. I need to discuss my son Tyler Miller's tuition payments," I said to the woman who answered. "Of course, Mr. Miller. What can I help you with today?" She replied pleasantly. I need to cancel all future payments effective immediately. There was a pause on the line. Mr. Miller, are you aware that canceling payments mid-semester will result in your son being unable to register for next semester's classes? There may also be late fees assessed. I'm aware, I said, my voice calm but firm. I'd also like to cancel the automatic payments from my account. May I ask why you're making this change? She asked, her tone professional but curious. I almost told her the truth but decided against it. Family circumstances have changed. My son will need to apply for loans or find alternative arrangements. The second call was to my lawyer, explaining what I wanted to do and why. He advised me on the legal implications. Since Tyler was 20, I had no legal obligation to pay for his education, regardless of what promises I might have made. The third call was to my sister, the only person I knew would understand what I was about to do. Are you sure about this, Rich? She asked after I explained my plan. It seems pretty extreme. He needs to learn, Janet, I said. He thinks everything I've given him is just expected, like I'm some kind of ATM that also happens to be his dad. What about Thanksgiving? You're going to be alone. I hadn't thought that far ahead. The idea of spending Thanksgiving by myself in the house where I'd celebrated every Thanksgiving with my son for the past 13 years felt unbearable. Come here, Janet said. Bring the turkey. The kids would love to see their uncle anyway. But wait, the story gets even more intense from here. You might think canceling tuition payments was the most dramatic thing I did, but what happened next took things to a whole new level. On the morning of Thanksgiving Day, I woke up early and packed my overnight bag for Janet's house. As I was loading it into my truck, my phone rang. It was Tyler. Dad, he said, his voice slightly panicked. I just got an email from the financial aid office. They said my tuition account is delinquent and that you've canceled all future payments. There must be some mistake. I leaned against my truck and took a deep breath. No mistake, Tyler. What? Dad, what are you talking about? This has to be an error. They're saying I can't register for next semester. I know what they're saying, I replied, keeping my voice even. I was the one who called them. There was a long pause before he spoke again. Is this because of Thanksgiving? Are you seriously doing this because I'm spending Thanksgiving with Mom and David? No, Tyler. I'm doing this because it's time you learned that actions have consequences and relationships require effort from both sides. This is insane, he shouted, his voice cracking. You can't just decide to stop paying for my college because I hurt your feelings. Do you know what this will do to my future? Your future will be whatever you make it, son. Just like mine was. I worked construction during the day and took night classes for 3 years to get my business degree. No one paid my way. So that's it? You're just cutting me off because I wanted to spend one holiday with Mom's family? I sighed. Tyler, this isn't about one holiday. This is about respect and appreciation. When was the last time you thanked me for anything? When was the last time you called just to check in? Not because you needed money or something else from me. He didn't answer immediately, which told me everything I needed to know. What am I supposed to do? He finally asked, his voice smaller now. That's up to you. You can apply for loans like most of your classmates. You can ask your stepfather with the big house and the Michelin-starred chef if he'll pay. Or you can come talk to me in person, and we can discuss what happens next. I hung up and finished loading my truck. I had just started the engine when my phone lit up with a text from my ex-wife, Linda. What the hell are you doing to our son? This is emotional blackmail. I didn't respond. I put my phone on silent and drove to Janet's house, where I spent a surprisingly pleasant Thanksgiving with my sister, her husband, and their 3 teenage children. I didn't check my phone once during dinner. It wasn't until late that night, after everyone else had gone to bed, that I finally looked at my messages. 6 missed calls from Tyler, 4 from Linda, 2 voicemails, and 13 text messages. I read through Tyler's texts first. Dad, please call me back. This isn't fair and you know it. I'm sorry about Thanksgiving, but this is extreme. Mom says you're being manipulative. David said he'll pay if he has to, but that's not the point. Dad, please just talk to me. The last one, sent just an hour earlier, simply said, I'm coming over tomorrow morning. Please be there. I responded with, I'll be home at 10. The next morning, I was sitting on my front porch with a cup of coffee when Tyler's car pulled into the driveway. The car I'd helped him pick out. The car I'd co-signed for because he had no credit history. The car whose insurance I still paid for every month. He got out slowly, looking uncertain, an expression I hadn't seen on his face since he was much younger. He was wearing an expensive-looking sweater I didn't recognize, probably a gift from the Prestons. Hey, Dad, he said quietly as he approached. Tyler, I nodded. Coffee? Sure. I went inside and poured him a cup, black with 1 sugar, the way he'd started drinking it his senior year of high school because that's how I drink mine. When I came back out, he was sitting in the chair next to mine, looking at his hands. I handed him the coffee and sat down. So, I said after a moment of silence, how was Thanksgiving with the Prestons? He looked up, surprised by the question. It was fine, I guess. Lots of people I didn't know, very formal. The food was good. I nodded and took a sip of my coffee. Dad? He started, then stopped, seeming to search for the right words. What you did with the tuition, I don't understand how you could do that. I think you do understand, Tyler. You just don't like it. He shook his head. It feels like you're punishing me for spending time with Mom and David. Is that what you think this is about? Me being jealous of your relationship with your stepfather? Isn't it? He challenged. I set my coffee down and turned to face him directly. No, son, it's not. This is about you taking me for granted. This is about you treating me like I'm nothing more than a bank account that funds your life. This is about you forgetting that relationships, real relationships, require effort from both people. I call you, he protested weakly. You call when you need something. Money for books, advice on what classes to take, help with your car problems. When was the last time you called just to ask how I'm doing? When was the last time you showed any interest in my life at all? He looked away, unable to meet my eyes. And then, you call me 3 days before Thanksgiving, a holiday we've spent together every year since you were 7 years old, to tell me you'd rather be with the Prestons because they have a bigger house and fancier food. I didn't say it like that, he mumbled. You didn't have to. The message was clear enough. We sat in silence for a few minutes, the weight of unspoken words hanging between us. So what happens now? He finally asked. Are you really going to make me drop out of Stanford? That depends on you, I said. I'm not asking for much, Tyler, just basic respect and consideration. The kind you seem to have no problem showing to the Prestons. He flinched at that, and for the first time, I saw a glimmer of understanding in his eyes. I didn't realize. He started, then shook his head. I didn't think about how it would make you feel. That's exactly the problem. You didn't think about me at all. Another silence fell between us, but this one felt different, less hostile, more contemplative. I'm sorry, Dad, he said eventually, his voice barely above a whisper. I really am. I was thoughtless and ungrateful. It was the first genuine apology I'd heard from him in years. I appreciate that, I said. Will you reconsider the tuition? He asked cautiously. I'll think about it, I replied. But things need to change, Tyler, real change, not just promises to do better. He nodded slowly. I understand. Do you? Because I need you to really hear what I'm saying. I won't always be here. Someday, you'll wish you had spent more time with me, had more conversations, made more memories. And all the fancy houses and gourmet meals in the world won't make up for that loss. His eyes welled up then, something I hadn't seen since he was maybe 12 years old. I know, Dad. I know. What happened next? surprised even me. Tyler stood up, set his coffee cup down, and did something he hadn't done in years. He hugged me. Not a quick, obligatory hug, but a real embrace. The kind we used to share when he was a little boy and I was his hero. "I love you, Dad," he said, his voice muffled against my shoulder. "I'm really sorry." And just like that, the anger I'd been carrying melted away. Not completely, I'm only human after all, but enough that I could see a path forward for us. "I love you too, son," I replied, patting his back awkwardly. "Always have, always will." When we pulled apart, both of us pretended not to notice the other wiping away tears. "So, what about the tuition?" he asked again, a hint of his old self coming through. I couldn't help but laugh. "Let's talk inside. I've got leftover turkey if you're hungry." "Actually, I am," he admitted. "The food yesterday was fancy, but the portions were tiny. I was still starving after dinner." As we walked inside together, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. We still had work to do. Relationships always require maintenance, but for the first time in years I felt like we were moving in the right direction. Over turkey sandwiches at the kitchen table where we'd shared thousands of meals, we made a plan. I would reinstate the tuition payments for the upcoming semester, but with conditions. Tyler would come home one weekend a month. He would call at least once a week, not to ask for anything, but just to talk. And he would spend his summer working for my construction company, not interning at David Preston's real estate firm as he'd planned. "And Thanksgiving?" I asked. "What about next year?" Tyler smiled, a genuine smile that reached his eyes. "Next year we'll have it here, just us." "What about the Prestons and their Michelin-starred chef?" I couldn't resist asking. He shrugged. "Nobody makes turkey like you do, Dad. And besides, it's our tradition." I nodded, satisfied with his answer. "One more thing," I said. "I want you to start paying for your own car insurance." "But..." He started to protest, then caught himself. "Okay, that's fair." We shook on it, sealing our new agreement man to man. But the story doesn't end there. Because life is never that simple, is it? 2 weeks later, Linda called me. She was furious. "Do you know what you've done?" she demanded without preamble. "You'll have to be more specific," I replied calmly, though I had a pretty good idea what she was talking about. Tyler turned down David's offer to pay for his tuition. He told David he appreciated the offer, but that he and his father had worked things out. I couldn't help the smile that spread across my face. "Is that right? Don't sound so smug," she snapped. "What you did was manipulative and cruel. You used your financial power to control our son." "Is that what David told you to say?" I asked, unable to keep the edge from my voice. "Because it sounds like something a man who's used to buying affection would think," she gasped. "That's unfair, Richard." "Is it? Tell me something, Linda. Has Tyler ever turned down anything David offered him before?" Her silence was answer enough. "I thought so," I continued. "Maybe, just maybe, our son is learning that some things are more important than money and status. Maybe he's learning about loyalty and respect and what it means to be a man of his word." "You've always been so self-righteous," she said, but there was less heat in her voice now. "No, I've always been consistent. I've always been here, through everything. The midnight fevers, the baseball games, the broken hearts, the college applications. I've been the constant in his life. And all I asked for in return was to be treated with basic respect and consideration." After a long pause, she sighed. "He wants to bring a girl home for Christmas. Someone named Amber." This was news to me. Tyler hadn't mentioned a girlfriend. "He says she can't afford to go home to Michigan. So he asked if she could spend Christmas with you," Linda continued. I was stunned, not just because Tyler was bringing a girl home, but because he'd chosen to spend Christmas with me instead of at the Prestons' undoubtedly extravagant celebration. "Of course she's welcome," I said, trying to keep the emotion out of my voice. "He also asked for your stuffing recipe," Linda added. a note of reluctant amusement creeping into her tone. Apparently, the Michelin-starred chef's stuffing didn't compare to yours. I laughed at that. It's just stale bread, celery, and poultry seasoning. Nothing fancy. That's not the point, and you know it, she said. But she was laughing too now. When Christmas arrived, Tyler showed up with Amber, a sweet, unpretentious girl studying nursing on a scholarship. They arrived a day early so Tyler could help me prepare everything just like we used to do when he was younger. As we worked side by side in the kitchen, Tyler nudged my shoulder. "Hey, Dad? Yeah? Thanks for canceling my tuition." I looked at him, surprised. That's not something I ever expected to hear. He shrugged, focusing intently on the potatoes he was peeling. It woke me up, made me realize I was turning into someone I don't want to be. "And who's that?" I asked. "Someone who forgets where they came from. Someone who measures worth by price tags." He glanced toward the living room, where Amber was setting the table. "Someone who might have missed out on what really matters." I followed his gaze and understood. Amber wasn't the type of girl who would have impressed the Prestons. She didn't wear designer clothes or come from money. But the way my son looked at her, with genuine admiration and affection, told me everything I needed to know. "You're a good man, Tyler," I said, patting his shoulder. "You just needed a reminder." He nodded. "Sometimes the best lessons are the hardest ones, right?" "That's what my father used to say," I replied, remembering the hospital conversation that had guided my decision. That Christmas was the best one we'd had in years. Tyler was present, truly present, not just physically in the room but engaged and attentive. He asked about my business, listened to my stories, and even showed Amber the birdhouse we'd built together when he was 9. After dinner, when Amber was helping with the dishes, Tyler pulled me aside and handed me an envelope. "What's this?" I asked. "Open it," he urged. Inside was a check for $200, exactly the amount of 1 month's car insurance payment. "I've been doing some freelance web design," he explained. "Not much, but enough to cover my insurance for the next 6 months. I wanted to start with paying you back for this month." I started to protest, to tell him he could keep the money, but something in his expression stopped me. This wasn't just about the money for him. This was about keeping his word, about showing me he was serious about our new understanding. So instead, I simply said, "Thank you, son." 6 months later, I received another surprise. Tyler called to tell me he'd be spending the summer working for my construction company as agreed, but he had a proposition. "I've been thinking," he said. "Stanford's great and all, but what?" I prompted when he hesitated. "But I'm thinking about transferring to state next year. Their business program is actually better for what I want to do, and it's a lot closer to home." "What about Stanford? The prestige, the connections?" He laughed. "That sounds like something David would say." "Touché," I admitted. "Besides," Tyler continued, "I've been talking to some of your subcontractors. Did you know Rodriguez is looking to retire in a few years? And that he doesn't have anyone to take over his electrical business?" I hadn't known that, but I could see where Tyler was going with this. "Are you thinking what I think you're thinking?" I asked. "Maybe," he replied, and I could hear the smile in his voice. "I figure I could learn the electrical side during summers and weekends, get my certification after graduation, work for him for a year or two, and then take over when he retires," I finished for him. "Exactly. And maybe down the road we could expand your business to include electrical work in-house. Miller & Son Contracting and Electrical." Miller & Son. The word sent a wave of emotion through me that I wasn't prepared for. "What about the Preston real estate empire?" I asked, only half joking. "I thought that was the plan." "Not anymore," Tyler said firmly. "I'd rather build something with you than have something handed to me by David." I had to clear my throat before I could respond. "Well, we should talk about it when you're home. It's a big decision." "I've already made up my mind, Dad. I just wanted to run it by you first." After we hung up, I sat in my office for a long time, looking at the single photo on my desk, Tyler at his high school graduation, grinning proudly beside me in his cap and gown. I thought about how close I'd come to losing him to the allure of wealth and status that the Prestons represented. And I thought about how a single difficult decision, canceling his tuition payments, had changed our relationship's trajectory. Would I have actually gone through with it if he hadn't come around? Would I have really let him struggle with student loans or drop out of Stanford? I honestly don't know. But I do know that sometimes being a parent means making the hard calls, even when they break your heart. Sometimes love means standing firm when it would be easier to give in. As Thanksgiving approached again, I didn't have to ask what Tyler's plans were. He called me in October to make sure I knew he'd be home and to ask if Amber could join us again. Of course, I told him. She's always welcome here. Great, he said. Oh, and Dad? I was thinking maybe we could invite Uncle Steve and his kids this year too. Make it a bigger thing. Uncle Steve was my younger brother who I'd had a falling out with years ago over something that now seemed trivial. We'd reconciled at my father's funeral but hadn't quite returned to the closeness we once shared. I'll give him a call, I promised, touched that Tyler had thought of it. Cool, and I'll handle the pies this year. Amber's teaching me her grandmother's apple pie recipe. After we hung up, I found myself smiling. My son, my grown son, was thinking about family connections, about rebuilding bridges, about creating traditions of his own, while honoring the ones we'd established. And it all started with one of the hardest decisions I'd ever made as a father. So if you're a parent struggling with an entitled child, or if you're wondering whether tough love is sometimes the right approach, I'm here to tell you that it can be. Not always, and not for everyone. Every family is different. But sometimes the most loving thing you can do is to stand firm, to set boundaries, and to demand the respect you deserve. Because at the end of the day, what our children need most isn't our money or our resources. It's our guidance, our wisdom, our examples of what it means to live with integrity and self-respect. That Thanksgiving, 1 year after the canceled tuition and the difficult conversations, we sat around my dining room table, a table full of family including Tyler, Amber, Uncle Steve, and his 3 children. As I looked at my son, really looked at him, I saw a young man who had learned perhaps the most valuable lesson I could have taught him. That true wealth isn't measured in dollars or square footage, but in the strength of our relationships and the integrity of our actions. Dad, Tyler said, raising his glass in a toast. Thanks for teaching me what really matters. And in that moment, I knew that every difficult decision, every sleepless night, every hard conversation had been worth it. Because my son wasn't just saying the words, he was living them. And as a father, I couldn't ask for anything more.